Today on Shop Nation, we give an update to my 20-year-old garage floor by adding a very high quality epoxy coating. What's up, you guys? I'm Travis, this is Shop Nation, and this is my new house. Now, this house has a 3-car garage, as you can see behind me, and today we're going to be coating the floor with epoxy. Now, if you remember from my old shop, I did an epoxy floor in that one as well, off camera, before I started the channel, and I really liked having the floor coated. For that floor, I did it myself, and I used sort of a cheap option, but the results were largely okay. That is until I tried to move. I found out that the epoxy that I used just wasn't quite as durable as maybe it should have been. So now fast forward to today, and I'm looking for solutions to coat this garage floor. And after doing a lot of research, I've come to the conclusion that you basically get what you pay for. So if I want to put a really stout epoxy floor in this garage, I'm gonna have to look at different options. Now, if you do a quick search on YouTube, you'll find a ton of videos of a ton of different products and a tons of different ways to do epoxy floors. So it can be a bit confusing. But after kind of weeding through all of that, I came across Leggari products. Now, Leggari is the sponsor of today's video, but that was only after I found them and realized that that was gonna be my best option. So in this video, I'm gonna highlight the basic steps to put on a really high performance epoxy coating in a garage. Now, this isn't a tutorial, all right? There are way better videos out there that do that, even specifically from Leggari. So if you wanna learn about all the individual steps like preparation, base coat, top coat, whatever you want to see, it's already on there. My goal in this video is to kind of show you my process of doing it and the hopefully good results as well. Now, the first step for any epoxy product is always going to be preparing your concrete. Now, back when I did it in my old shop, the only preparation I did was an acid etch. And the main reason for doing that was because it was a brand new house. So I didn't have set in oil stains, I didn't have concrete sealer, it was raw concrete that was already pretty porous as it was. So I think I can get away with doing an acid etch. With this house, however, it's 20 years old and it has all of the kind of baked in oil stains that you would come to expect in a garage. So for that reason, I need to use something a little bit more aggressive. So I'm gonna use a shot blaster, which basically just pelts the surface of the concrete with little metal BBs and exposes that aggregate and gives a really rough surface that the epoxy can then stick to. Now, like you or anybody else for that matter, we don't own a shot blaster, so I just rented one from a local tool rental company. So I'm gonna go figure out how to use that and then edit the video so it looks like I'm a professional. Okay, so it turns out these things are pretty simple, but there are a couple little things to get used to. Eventually though, I did get the hang of it and you could actually see it start to work. Here you can see what it looks like going over some old oil stains. It's kind of oddly satisfying, kind of like mowing your yard, except there wasn't a cup holder on this thing, so that's kind of a bummer. The process takes a while, like several hours. Each pass is about 8 inches wide, and when you multiply that out across 750 square feet, you better have some good audiobooks and podcasts teed up, because woo! And this is actual speed. Not even exaggerating. What you can't hear is how loud this damn thing is too. Plus, every once in a while, you'll feel one of those little BBs shooting your shin, which, you know, is neat. Just keep telling yourself, it's worth it. It's worth it. Nothing worth having is easy. Unless, of course, you pay someone to do this, and then it's totally worth it. Here you can see the difference between the old garage floor and the freshly blasted area. It's noticeably more rough, which is exactly what you're going for. With the whole garage scuffed up, I need to then add a groove into the concrete where I wanted my epoxy edge to end. This groove helps anchor the epoxy coating so that the exposed edge doesn't get pulled up as things inevitably run into it. Then it is cleanup time. So it is so important to get the floor as clean as possible, including all dust and debris. Once that was done, I then cleaned the entire floor with some simple green concentrate. If there was any oil, grease, or dirt left over, this should take care of it. Now, I gave my floor plenty of time to fully dry out. You should technically do a moisture test on your concrete, but ain't nobody got time for that. Now it's time to, of course, tape everything that you don't want the epoxy on. Another pro tip that I actually got from watching the Leggari videos is to leave a gap between the tape and the floor. What this does is prevent the tape edge from getting stuck in the epoxy and makes removal really easy. So the first coat is actually a primer. It's a relatively thin coat that's going to give the epoxy something to really bond with. Now you won't find this step in those cheap big box store epoxy kits. All of the Leggari products, whether it's primer, epoxy resin, or the urethane top coat, come in really easy to handle containers and makes mixing the right ratios a breeze, even if you had to break this down to do a smaller area. Now with every coating, I always start by cutting in the edges and the sidewalls. And this is where having another set of hands would be really helpful because I was doing all of this myself. Now one thing that really stuck out to me and makes Leggari products great is that the company was initially founded to help the average DIYer gain access to professional grade epoxy. Historically, only the contractors could get the good stuff, and consumers had to settle for kind of the average, literally watered down alternatives. And all of the products from Leggari are also formulated to have low odor, easy to mix, and lots of working time. Sorry for the dark shots here, but I had to keep moving regardless of the crappy light. Shortly after applying the primer, I added the base coat of clear epoxy resin. Now once this stuff is mixed, you have to get it out of the bucket ASAP because it's actually going to start to kick and heat up. Once it's spread out thin on the floor, you have a ton of working time to get it rolled out evenly. Now there are definitely some key tools to use when doing a job like this, like these spiked shoe adapters that let me walk on the wet epoxy. I'll link everything I use for this job in the video description below. Once that was all rolled out, I could immediately add the color flakes to the wet epoxy. Now I've learned that more is always better. My last floor, I was a little chintzy on the flakes. I gave the epoxy 2 days to harden until I came back and scraped the surface to remove the excess flakes. Now this may look like I'm ruining my brand new floor, but it's an important step. With all those extra flakes scraped off the floor, I used a combination of a leaf blower and a vacuum to get all of them out of the garage before moving on to the next step. Once that was dry, I can now add the urethane top coat. This will protect the epoxy underneath from things like UV and scratches and adds a ton of wear resistance. Again, this is not something that's usually included in one of those cheap kits. So I'm going with a matte finish, but there's also a gloss option if you want a little bit more shine. In addition, you can include friction additive to help prevent the surface from being slippery when wet. With the final cure time done, I can now remove all the taped edges to reveal the final product. Now this is where that anchoring groove came into play. It really secures that edge. I do need to go back and fix some of the old trim where the tape actually pulled off some of the paint. I am absolutely thrilled by how this floor turned out. It was a ton of work. Many long hours and late nights went into this thing. What a transformation. Looks pretty good. Now this is one of those projects that might look daunting on the front end, but once you do it, oh my God, is it worth it. It's amazing how much cleaner your garage stays and how much easier it is to clean now that you have a coating like this. So one of the first questions that I'm sure you're wondering is, How much did it cost? Okay, so let's quickly break down those costs. If you're gonna do this yourself, in general, a good rule of thumb, if using a high quality epoxy, it's gonna cost anywhere from $2 to $2.50 per square foot for materials. Now, one thing that I learned is that it's not just the cost of materials if you're doing it yourself, it's also the cost of the equipment needed to do the work. So during the first step where I prepared the concrete, I used that shot blaster and a vacuum. To rent that over the course of a couple days cost me about $400. Now, there are cheaper ways to potentially do this. You can do what's called a diamond grind, where you use a special wheel in an angle grinder or a larger grinder, and you go over the whole surface. So you could potentially do that for cheaper if you had some of that equipment on hand. The next set of costs was all of the consumables to apply the epoxy. So what I mean by this would be buckets, rollers, gloves, mixing containers, stir sticks, tape, plastic, all that stuff. Now, this cost is obviously going to vary because some stuff you may already have on hand. But assuming you have nothing, I spent about $200 to $250 on that material. So in total, to do my 3-car garage, which is 750 square feet, would have cost me about $2,300. I will also mention that because Leggari is sponsoring this video, they supplied me with the raw material itself, which I am hugely grateful for. Now, if you like to use a contractor to do this, they're going to charge anywhere from $5 to $7 a square foot, but that's going to include the cost of materials. Now, some might say, holy crap, I don't have $2,300 to coat my floor, and that might be the case. And there are cheaper options out there, but you have to understand that you are really getting what you're paying for. The epoxy used in a system like this is 100% solids. It goes on much thicker, is much tougher, and when you add on the urethane top coat, you have a surface that is so much stronger and less likely to pull up on things like hot tires as you're driving in and out of your garage. I can now say that I've done both, and yes, you can save a pretty good chunk of change if you go with the cheap system, but how much are you really saving if you're replacing it 3 years down the road? So it's just something to think about. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a big thanks to Leggari for supporting this video and really DIYers like us who want to do this to our own garage floor. Leggari has a great YouTube channel that you should go check out if you want to go see all the crazy cool stuff you can do with their products. And of course, I'll link everything I used in this video in the video description below. We'll do a real quick subscriber update. If you're new to the channel, this is something that I kind of like to do at the end of a lot of videos, just to kind of show the growth of the channel and the community so far. As of shooting today, we're at 90,607 subscribers. Bam! Yes, that means we crossed 90,000. It's funny looking back, when I started the channel, I thought 100,000 was a pipe dream, but maybe we'll get there. That's gonna wrap up this video. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. I will catch you guys on the next project, and as always, continue to pursue shop greatness.